Welcome to this video, dear learners, on nutrition. So this is the second video under nutrition. In our previous video, we discussed about nutrition. We said nutrition is under characteristics of living things. So it's one of the characteristics of living organisms. And we said nutrition is simply the way of obtaining nutrients, okay? And these nutrients were obtained from foods that we eat, okay? So nutrition takes place both in plants and in animals, okay? So we gave examples of nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats or lipids, water, mineral salts, and as well vitamins. Then we said a nutrient is anything which, when taken in, will provide the body with a certain requirement, and these are the requirements we discussed. You are going to get energy from food, protection against diseases, when you take in vitamins, okay, like vitamin C, also for growth, okay, like when you take proteins, they add growth to your body. Then we talked about number one nutrient. We talked about carbohydrates, okay? We said these are nutrients made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So carbohydrates are made up of three elements, okay? We looked at the function of carbohydrates, the main source of energy, okay? And the examples of foods we gave: sugar, milk, rice, okay, maize, cassava, okay? And we said there's a condition called marasmus, which occurs when a person doesn't have carbohydrates, so they are lacking carbohydrates, okay? Then we looked at the classes of carbohydrates, and these are monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides, okay? We discussed this, and we said monosaccharides, they are the simplest carbohydrates simply because they're made up of one unit of glucose, one unit of glucose. Okay, so the types here are glucose, fructose, and galactose, okay? These are the monosaccharides, okay? The monosaccharides. Okay, so we discussed this. So the last thing I remember we did was disaccharides. We said they're made up of two monosaccharides. Okay, now today, okay, so let's now look at the other part of nutrition, still under carbohydrates. Okay, still under carbohydrates. We looked at three classes of carbohydrates. We said these are monosaccharides, disaccharides, as well as polysaccharides, okay, as well as polysaccharides, okay? So we will start our video on polysaccharides. So polysaccharides, so from the name itself, we said poly means many, saccharide simply means sugar, okay? And when we talk about sugar, okay, what do we mean when we talk about sugar in biology, okay? So when we talk about sugar, when we say a sugar in biology, we're simply talking about two things, okay? We're talking about monosaccharides and disaccharides, okay? So when we talk about sugars, we mean two things, okay? When we talk about sugars, we simply mean two things: monosaccharides and disaccharides, okay? So both monosaccharides and disaccharides are called sugars, okay? Are called sugars, okay? So both monosaccharide, which we discussed in our previous video, and disaccharides, okay, are called sugars, okay? Both monosaccharides and disaccharides are called sugars, okay? They are called sugar, okay? So a sugar, okay, a sugar has some characteristics, okay? So a sugar has these two characteristics, okay? A sugar has got these two characteristics. One, it is soluble in water, When we say soluble in water, meaning it can dissolve in water. So all sugars can dissolve in water. 2, okay, 2, we can say that, okay, 2, we can say that, apart from this, we can say that they are sweet, have a sweet taste. They have a sweet taste. Okay, they have a what? A sweet taste. Okay, so we gave examples in our previous video. So if you want to know what a sugar is, I said a sugar, it has these characteristics: soluble in water, okay, to be soluble in water, and it's going to have a sweet taste. Okay, so forgive me for the spelling there. It's sweet, the same sweet. It's going to have a sweet taste. Okay, it's going to have a sweet taste. Okay, and examples of sugars: monosaccharides and disaccharides. Okay, so we have examples. Monosaccharides here: glucose, fructose, galactose. Disaccharides: maltose, lactose, and sucrose. Okay, we looked at these in our previous video. Okay, our previous video. So before we proceed to polysaccharides, let's look at another important thing. Okay, another important thing, we have what we call a reducing sugar. Okay, reducing sugars. Okay, they are called reducing sugars because, okay, because they are able to reduce, they are able to reduce, okay, they are able to reduce copper 2 ions to copper 1 ion. Okay, that is why they are known as reducing sugars. Okay, they are known as reducing sugars because they can reduce copper to copper 1. Okay, hence the name reducing what? Reducing sugars. Okay, so all monosaccharides and disaccharides are reducing sugars. Okay, mark this. Okay, so all monosaccharides and disaccharides, okay, all monosaccharides and disaccharides are reducing sugars, okay, are reducing sugars except, okay, except, okay, they are reducing sugars except sucrose. Okay, all monosaccharides and disaccharides are reducing sugars except sucrose. So meaning sucrose is not a reducing sugar. Okay, so meaning sucrose is not a reducing sugar. If sucrose is not a reducing sugar, it means that sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Okay, so when I ask you, give me examples of reducing sugars, you should be able to give me an example of a reducing sugar. Give me an example of a non-reducing sugar, which is sucrose. You should be able to give me examples. Okay, and why are the reducing sugars called reducing sugars? We said because they're able to reduce copper 2 sulfate to copper 1 sulfate. Okay, that is what we can say for now. Okay, so we proceed to polysaccharides. Now Polysaccharides are complex carbohydrates, okay? They are complex carbohydrates. When we say complex, it means that they are not, it's just the opposite of simple. You remember monosaccharides, we said, are simple sugars. Now these are complex, okay? They are complex carbohydrates. They are complex carbohydrates, okay? Complex carbohydrates made up of many, or we can say more than two sugars chemically combined. Okay, they are complex. Okay, they are complex carbohydrates made up of, so just the name itself, many sugars combined together. Okay, many sugars combined together. So if you would take glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose, if you add all these glucose molecules together, a reaction will take place, and this reaction we call it a condensation reaction. A condensation reaction. Glucose plus glucose plus glucose, we call the reaction condensation reaction. Okay, why is it called condensation reaction? Because water molecule is lost. Because water molecule is lost during the reaction. Water molecule is lost during the reaction. Okay, so when you add glucose plus glucose plus glucose, so I'm going to denote glucose by the letter G. Okay, so if I get glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose, I'm going to get a polysaccharide, which we call, there are two types, okay? I'm going to get what we call glycogen. Okay? I'm going to get what we call glycogen. Okay? You can see the spelling nicely. This is glycogen. So glycogen is a polysaccharide, and this polysaccharide is found in animals, okay, in humans. Okay, so glycogen is found in humans. Okay, glycogen is stored in humans. Okay, it is stored, I'm going to say it is stored in the muscles and liver. Okay, it is stored in the muscles and the liver. So glycogen is a polysaccharide. Okay, it is a polysaccharide. Okay, it is what? A polysaccharide. So now glycogen, when it is formed, meaning it will be something like this. Since we added this glycogen, we added G, so these will be combined now. G, glucose, glucose, glucose. So they are combined like this: glucose, 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 glucose. Now you find that after it adds here, it starts to add even on this other side, making what we call a branch, okay? Making what we call a branch, okay? It's making what we call a branch, okay? It's making what we call what? A branch. So now, because of it has branched here, we call this a branch. It has branched here, okay? So that is how you can recognize that this is glycogen. It forms branches, okay? It forms branches, okay? So it forms branches, okay? So this is glycogen, okay? Then now, let's look at another polysaccharide, which we call starch. Starch is found in, you'll find starch in plants. Okay, plants make starch. Now, starch also, you're going to add glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose. Since these are polysaccharides, so you add as many glucose as you can add, okay? As many glucose as you can add. So when you add this, okay, again, a condensation reaction will take place. And this condensation reaction, the glucose now will be combined like this. They form linkages that combine them. They form what? Linkages. Now in starch, you'll notice that it does not form any branch. Glycogen here formed a branch, but starch does not form any branch, okay? Starch does not form any branch. It is simply a straight chain. It's a straight chain. It is a straight chain, okay? It is a straight chain. So that's the difference between starch, okay? So glycogen is a branched chain. Starch is a straight chain. Glycogen is found in animals, human beings, but starch is found in plants, okay? In plants. Okay, so now, why does why does glucose combine like that to form these polysaccharides? The main reason, okay, it's so that they can be stored. It's so that they can be stored, okay? So they can be stored, okay? Let's look at this now, okay? Let's give an example on something practical. So, in a case where you have, let's say in a case where you eat, let's say you eat rice, okay? So now, when you eat this rice, okay, you eat this rice, you're going to digest this rice. And this rice contains starch, okay? Rice contains starch. So when you eat this rice, you're going to digest it in your body, and this rice will become many molecules of glucose. Okay, many molecules of glucose. Okay, many, okay, and so on and so forth. So you'll find that, let's say these 2 molecules of glucose will be used for energy. You get energy. But what about the rest of the glucose molecules? What will happen to them? What will happen to the rest of the glucose molecules? Since the body can't give you energy, you already have energy enough. So the rest of these glucose molecules will be converted to glycogen. Okay, will be converted to glycogen. Okay, the rest of the glucose molecules will be converted to glycogen. Okay, so glycogen is the main storage form of carbohydrates in animals. It is the main storage form. Okay, it is the main storage form of carbohydrates in animals. Then look at starch. So now plants, okay, now we got what takes place in plants. Plants, we said these have starch. So now plants, what they do, they have a process we call photosynthesis. Okay, and this photosynthesis will produce, okay, this photosynthesis will produce glucose. Okay, so now it will produce many molecules of glucose. Now when these glucose are produced, some will be used by the plant for energy, and the excess that will remain, the excess, okay, the excess that will remain, excess glucose that will remain, some of it will be used for energy, but the excess that will remain will be changed to starch. And then once it is changed to starch, this starch now will be taken to the roots, where it is stored. Where it is stored. So we can say that starch is the main storage form of carbohydrates in plants. Okay, starch is the main storage form of carbohydrates in plants. In animals, we said glycogen is the main storage form of carbohydrates in where? In animals. Okay, in what? In animals. Okay, in animals. Okay, that's what we have discussed in this video. You have another type of polysaccharide. This one is called cellulose. So cellulose is a polysaccharide, but this polysaccharide called cellulose is only found in plants. Okay, so this cellulose, okay, it's what forms, okay, you can say it forms the cell wall. Okay, it forms the cell wall. Okay, it forms the cell wall, and our bodies cannot digest, we can't digest cellulose. Okay, we cannot digest cellulose. Okay, so glycogen, so cellulose and starch in these are in plants. Okay, but then glycogen is found in animals. Okay, so now the other name for glycogen, since they discovered that glycogen is a storage form, also starch is a storage form. So the storage form in plants is starch, okay, and the storage form it's glycogen. So sometimes glycogen will be referred to as animal starch. Okay, sometimes glycogen will be referred to as animal starch. Okay, so we're done with carbohydrates. We can now move to the other nutrient. Okay, These nutrients that we'll look at are called lipids. Okay, these nutrients are called, they are known as lipids. Okay, they are known as lipids. So let's look at these lipids. Okay, so lipids, okay, so lipids, okay, lipids, we call these fats. I think fats is more common. Okay, fats, okay, or oils, okay, or oils, okay, fats or oils. Okay, so now these are also nutrients. Okay, these are nutrients. Okay, so these nutrients, so they're made up of, okay, so lipids are made up of carbon, hydrogen, okay, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, however, the amount of oxygen is less. Okay, the amount of oxygen is less. Okay, here the amount of oxygen is less. Okay, so now these lipids that we are looking at here, they are soluble in alcohol, meaning they can dissolve in alcohol. Okay, but insoluble in water. Okay, they are insoluble in water. Okay, so now lipids are made up of two things. Okay, you have what we call the glycerol plus fatty acid. When you add these two, you get lipid. You add the two, you get a lipid. Okay, so glycerol and fatty acid, we call these as the building blocks of lipids, since it's what, when you add these, you build a lipid. So they are known as building blocks. So they are blocks that are used to build a lipid. Okay, so now lipids, what do we gain from lipids? Okay, what do we gain from lipids? Let's look at what we can gain from lipids. So before we look at what we can gain from lipids, let me show you. So you have a glycerol. Okay, write it like this, glycerol. Okay, so this is glycerol. Okay, this is a glycerol molecule. Okay, so a glycerol molecule is added to 3 fatty acids. Okay, so fatty acid in this way, then you have another fatty acid. Okay, added like this, you have another fatty acid. Okay, so you have these fatty acids. Okay, so this is how a lipid molecule looks like. It's made up of one glycerol. Okay, so here it is what, 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. Okay, so 1 glycerol. Okay, 1 glycerol. So this is 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. I've written them as Fa. Okay, Fa, fatty acids. Okay, so the uses now, let's look at the uses of lipids. Okay, uses of lipids. Uses of lipids. We're not going to waste time here. We're just simply going to memorize the word wife. Okay, wife. Okay, wife. So the uses of lipids, wife, we're going to write it like this. Okay, this is wife. Okay, this is what? Wife. So what do these words mean? Okay, so first one, they're used for water proofing. Okay, so on our skin here we have fats, and these fats, they prevent water from getting into our bodies. Okay, then the I for insulating. Okay, insulating, this is to do what? To prevent loss of heat. Okay, to prevent heat loss from our body. To prevent heat loss from our body. Then this one simply means formation of cell membrane. So that cell membrane we learned in cells, part of it is formed of what? Of fats and oils. Okay, so lipids form the cell membrane. Okay, but the cell wall is formed by cellulose. Okay, then the last one, also we get energy. We get energy from lipids. Okay, and lipids, they store a lot of energy. They store a lot of energy more than carbohydrates. Okay, the amount of energy they store is more than the energy stored in carbohydrates. Okay, so this is all the video. We've looked at lipids. Okay, so if you have any question or you didn't understand anything, please write on the comment section, or if you are in need of private biology tuitions or any science tuition, this is the number. Okay, so on WhatsApp, this is the number.